Hi.
Now, Michael Kent, founder and CEO of Azimo, will be addressing you next. Now, who is this gentleman? Well, Azimo is a global payment processing business, serves 190 countries. It says here $11 in funding. I think it's probably a little more than that.
I hope it's 11 million.
Yeah, I think it's around about $11 million in funding. And he's going to chat to you today about the future of international payments, and specifically looking at the next 5 years.
Yeah, thank you
Perfect.
very much.
Go for it.
Thank you. So when Victoria asked me to speak at this conference, I knew I had a hard job because she said the next 5 years of payments, pretty big topic. What she didn't tell me was that I was coming on after the robots. So I'm sorry, I could maybe do a little bit of robotic dancing, but that's about it. Should we actually get the robots? Would you prefer to talk about payments or the robots? Payments, you sure? Honestly? Okay, well that's good. So I guess, who am I and what do I know about payments? I've been a payments entrepreneur for the last decade, since before fintech was cool, before payments were cool, when you went to talk to an investor and they wanted to talk about e-commerce. So that's when I started my first payments business. I raised about $50 million into that. We bought 16 companies. We built it up to effectively the largest independent money transfer company in Europe. Its valuation in excess of about $150 million now, and we sold it to a private equity firm a couple of years ago. I recently founded Azimo, which is a digital payments business. It allows people to send money on their mobile phones or over the internet. So it's like Western Union, but on a mobile phone. So the next 5 years in payments, well, it's complicated. It's really, really complicated. If you think about where payments was 5 years ago, you had the payment networks, you had the traditional guys, the money transfer operators, MoneyGram, Western Union, you see their badges all over here, and you had the banks. In the last 5 years, you've seen a huge influx of other people who are interested in this space. You've got the FX brokers, people who trade currency. You've got the digital wallets, obviously PayPal, but also increasingly Alipay, IDCEE in the States, Boku, which is a mobile payments wallet. All the telcos are interested. I get phone calls on an almost weekly basis from Telefonica, Vodafone, those guys wanting to know how they can get into money and start, as well as controlling the telecoms rails, talking about money. We've talked a lot about it, actually, and I'll talk a little bit about it as well. You've got the protocols, Bitcoin being the obvious one, but also Litecoin, people like Ripple, and the old protocols. So Swift, it's been around for 50 years, but they're talking about going digital now as well. And then you've got the startups, people like me, people like TransferWise, Zoom, $1 billion business backed by Sequoia Capital. Interestingly, the e-com retailers. Any idea how many cards Amazon has on file? How many do you reckon? 450 million cards stored by Amazon on file globally, truly global business, and they want to get into payments because they think they have so much rich customer information that they would be able to enable people to pay each other, pay merchants. They don't want to give it to Visa anymore. They want to control it themselves. Rakuten in Japan, same sort of thing. Alipay, you remember all the shenanigans about the separation of Alipay from Alibaba? Could that actually be more valuable in the end than Alibaba itself? If you talk to eBay and PayPal, yeah, well, that's exactly the same thing. The messenger guys getting into it, so there's lots and lots of people. And then, of course, the traditional tech players, Google with their Google Wallet initiatives, haven't been that successful yet, but they're coming. Apple, who launched Apple Pay with the new iPhone 6, and Facebook. And we'll talk a bit more about Facebook, because I think that's probably one of the biggest trends happening in this space. Numbers. Big fucking numbers. So by 2022, there will be $54 trillion annually of international payments. $54 trillion. It's a vast number, and it's growing very, very fast. What does that mean? I guess for my part of the market, which is remittances, this is small amounts of money that people working in one country send back to another country to either support their own businesses or to support their family or their friends. Traditionally a market served by people like Western Union. That's about a $500 billion annual market. Huge. $500 billion a year. and it's growing. You know, you don't see these kind of growth curves in many other parts of the market. The European market in the EU, $100 billion. Top player or top sending regions in Europe, Germany, a lot of money flowing back to here from Germany, actually. France, Italy, Spain, all vast, vast markets for money transfer. And the number one player, Western Union, only has a 15% market share. And closer to home. So I don't know if these facts and figures are correct. They're from the World Bank. But this is what they tell me. $1 billion, and I love to see $1 billion visualized, because it gives you something to aim for, doesn't it? $1 billion, $9 billion a year flow back to the Ukraine in remittances from overseas workers outside of Ukraine, sending money home. This is not businesses, it's just personal employee remittances. That's about 5% of Ukrainian GDP. They actually think it's a much larger number than that. And on average, that costs people about 3 to 5%. So the intermediaries are taking 3 to 5% of that $9 billion. Think about it, it's huge. So I'm going to talk about three, I guess, mega trends that I think are happening in the industry that'll really impact it over the next 5 years. I don't know the answers. You see all those other players in the marketplace, they don't know the answers either, but I can give you some ideas of some areas that I think should focus in. I'll tell you a little bit about Azimo, and then I'll tell you why, if you're thinking about where to invest or where to start up or where to look at for your next business idea, I really think you should think about payments, and I think you should think about remittances in particular. So obviously, everyone knows this, but let's just remind ourselves. Everyone in the world will very soon have a smartphone, both in the traditional sending countries, the so-called developed world, and the emerging markets, the developing world. And it's dwarfing you've never seen a growth rate like it. In Ukraine, 90% people have got a mobile. In fact, I suspect that's a bit low, actually. But these are the figures I pulled off the internet on the way here. 90% of people have a mobile. A third of the population have a smartphone. And that has doubled in the last year, and they think it will double again. Mobile smartphone ubiquity. What does that actually mean? Well, increasingly, that drives financial inclusion. So this is a company called M-Pesa. I don't know if some of you have heard of M-Pesa. It's owned by Vodafone, and this is the impact that M-Pesa has had in Kenya. Now, if you look at financial inclusion, the number of people who have a bank account, some sort of store of money, somewhere they can put money that's not in cash. Traditionally in Kenya, it was running about 25%. In 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, in 2006. M-Pesa has changed that, has turned it on its head, and now nearly 80% of people have access to some form of banking. And if you think about that, if you're an entrepreneur or you're an investor, what do you want? We want people financially on grid, and mobile phone is enabling that to happen. That's 3x times the customers in Kenya who can actually buy stuff, who can save, who can buy other financial products. It's huge. The rise of social, and I think this is a really important one that has been overlooked by many of the commentators in the space. This is what Mark said, I think he said it in 2011, just for the IPO. There's going to be a chance to rethink every industry from a social perspective. And it's almost taken as old hat in e-commerce and in travel, but in financial services, nobody's actually really thought about the impact of social. Facebook are controlling the world. This is 2014. This is the countries in which Facebook is the dominant social network, pretty much everywhere except for Russia and China. And these are the number of Facebook users on traditional send and receive countries. So when I think about my business, competitors of Western Union, obviously United States, 166 million people on Facebook, but almost as interestingly, there's 63 million people in Brazil using Facebook. Millions and millions and millions of dollars flow every year from the US to Brazil. But traditionally, that's all gone through the banking system. There's been no communication between those individual consumers. Social changes all of that. Those connections already exist. WhatsApp, 600 million users. And this is what's coming. It was released this week that Facebook Messenger has a payments interface installed into it. They didn't want us to know about it yet, but if you can imagine, very soon you're going to be able to share value, send money incredibly easily at the press of a button. Who here's on Facebook Messenger? most people. Who here's on WhatsApp? You know, the level of ubiquity of this interpersonal, person-to-person payments is huge. So social also has a huge impact when you're building a business. So in terms of our business, we built Facebook integration from the word go. So when people send money, they can log on with their Facebook ID. They can send money to any of their Facebook friends. And that's incredibly powerful because rather than have to email your friend, find out what his banking details are, you can just hit him on Facebook, say, I want to send you some money, 2 clicks and it's done. So those rails already exist. Those social rails already exist, and you can just send it straight through there. Marketing and broadcast, everyone knows about social marketing and broadcast messaging. I'm not going to talk about those. A support channel. 50% of our customers now contact us on Twitter or Facebook. Nobody phones up and says, you know, I want to talk to customer support anymore. They're all using those channels. And that's great for us because we service people in 198 countries around the world. They can get in touch with us 24/7 using Facebook for free. We can go back to them. We know who they are. It's incredibly important. Social proof. Financial services. Everyone tells you you shouldn't use the internet to send money, don't they? Never send money to anyone using Western Union. They tell you that all the time. And new brands. Financial services is all about trust. So having social and using social to generate social proof, to have people talking about your brand, to have people within their communities talking about your brand, say you can trust these guys. They're the good guys. They're cheap, but they're also good. They actually exist. You can send money with them and you can be safe. Incredibly important. So if you're building a payments business, think about building up that social proof from And then the last thing is identity and KYC. And this is going to fly in the face of some of the Bitcoin stuff that we've heard about. And I will talk about Bitcoin in a minute. But at the moment, I need to know who my customers are. I'm a regulated business. I'm regulated in Europe. I'm regulated in the UK. I'm regulated in the US, or in the process of getting regulated in the US. And those regulators say, we're very worried about people moving money around the world. And we're worried because we're worried about money laundering. We think people will be taking money and sending it elsewhere for nefarious activities. We're worried about tax evasion. We want to know that people are paying the right amount of tax. And we need to know who the customers who are sending money are. So this is the big problem for Bitcoin right now, is that the KYC is just not there. And by KYC, I mean know your customer. Facebook, social, all of them, Twitter, any of these feeds will give you a very rich perspective on a customer, far and above them sending a copy of their passport or walking into a branch. So for us, we're already using about 75 data points that we pull off social media to say, is this a good person? Do we actually believe we know who this person is? Do we trust them? Do we want to take their payment? Do we think they're actually trying to pull a fast one? Are they doing anything naughty or not? So social proof, important. And then Bitcoin and the blockchain. And you could actually spend the next 2 days of the conference talking about Bitcoin. I have some predictions. So it's going to happen. It will change everything. I think the timescale is potentially longer than some of the evangelists would have us believe or would hope. The thing about VCs you learn when you've raised lots of money is that they nearly always get the direction of travel right. They get the endpoint right, but they very often get the timing wrong. And actually, in terms of returns and making money, it's all about timing. I think Bitcoin is, and more particularly the blockchain technologies, are going to impact this market. I think it's 5 to 10 years out. We're already impacting using some of these technologies, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I think 3 things. One is for the wholesale transactions. So if you see who's implemented some of these technologies, a lot of it's actually being put in place by banks. And if you think, I'm a global bank, I've got to move money around the world, I have it in lots of different jurisdictions, I actually need that cash to move around very quickly and efficiently. I can either use an existing mechanism like SWIFT, or I can implement a cryptocurrency, a blockchain technology, Ripple or Litecoin or Bitcoin, and I can move money around just my own business incredibly quickly. Never has to go outside, but I can if I can use blockchain technology, it's that distributed general ledger internally, then it helps me. You know, I can manage my working capital much better. And if you think about my business, I send millions and millions and millions of dollars a day to 198 countries around the world. And if I want to send money to the Philippines, I take a whole load of transactions, I aggregate them, I instruct a payer on the far end in the Philippines to pay out those transactions. Are you with me here? Yeah. So I aggregate transactions. To do that, I have to send some money to the Philippines using the traditional banking mechanism. So I send, you know, maybe $5 million a day to the Philippines, and then I instruct the payout. That payout, all the customers want the payout instantly. So I have to have some money in the Philippines and have to have some money that's going to be sent to the Philippines. So I'm using up working capital. I'm using up investors' cash. If I turn on Bitcoin, or if I turn on Ripple, or I turn on anyone else, that transaction becomes instant. So I don't need to hold value in the Philippines. I can just pass it through instantly. And so for the average money transfer business, you know, might have anything between 10 and $100 million in working capital at any one time. You turn on a cryptocurrency, and that's instant release of cash into your business. What shareholders wouldn't like that? So it's a big impact. And by the way, stop me if you've got any questions on any of this. I think anonymity, which everyone is very keen on in the Bitcoin community, will be removed. So I talked to at least the financial services regulators in the UK, and they will not allow a completely anonymous digital currency to exist in their country without any regulation. It's not going to happen. Much as we might like it to, it just will not happen. Anyone who wants to take Bitcoin will have to give up some of the anonymous nature of Bitcoin. So I think you're going to find that there's a lot of providers out there, Coinbase, who I know pretty well, CoinFloor, who I've invested in London. Those guys are starting to say, well, what information can we capture? Consumers understand that this is a very useful mechanism, it's very low cost, and they're probably prepared to give up some of their anonymity. So I think you're going to see a lot of people capturing more data around the Bitcoin transactions. And I also think consumer wallet adoption, the guys at the far end, you know, either you sending Bitcoin on your phone or me receiving Bitcoin on my phone, I think that's a way off. I think it's going to be pretty limited. And the thing you've got to remember is, when did your mum first start using email? I don't know. My mum she's used it for 4 years now, so she's probably slightly behind the curve. But I think that consumer adoption of Bitcoin is going to take a while. So about Azimo, what do? Well, we're the reimagination of money transfer. So the old guys, Western Union, you see them everywhere. Average cost of a Western Union transaction out of Europe is 9%. So you want to send money from Western Union location to anywhere in the world, costs you about 9%. Azimo allows every single one of these smartphones in Europe to become a Western Union location. You can send money to 198 countries around the world. You can do it instantly. You can send it to digital wallets. You can send it to cash. You can send it to any branch of Private Bank, and they'll pay it out in cash. We've got 400,000 different distribution points on the network. You can send it to any bank account in the world. You can send it to mobile credit top-up. We're pretty much ubiquitous in terms of the services that we offer. What do we want to do? Well, we want to build a billion-dollar business. It's a huge market, $500 billion market. I'm like, yeah, everyone wants to build a billion-dollar business. Who doesn't want to build a billion-dollar business? You don't want to. Everyone does. Okay, I thought you didn't want to. So, there are lots of billion-dollar businesses in payments already. Western Union, MoneyGram, Zoom, Travelex, Skrill, and these are not huge. PayPal, the list goes on. This is not, even with a 1 to 2% market share in payments, you're way over the billion threshold. These are big, big markets. Even something like Contact System, Ruslav Bank, valued in the tens of billions of dollars. If you build a payments network and people like it and they use it, you can build a very big, valuable business. Just more on us, we've sent to 300,000 payout locations. We think we can reach, with our network, about 5 billion people. We pay out in cash in China, we pay out in cash in India, we pay out in Brazil, all of the big markets we've got covered. 73 currencies that we take, we pay out in lots of different ways. I could tell you an awful lot more about it. I suggest, actually, if you're interested in this stuff, we talk afterwards. But in essence, what happens, the money comes in on a mobile phone. We trade it automatically using our liquidity providers. We take it into whatever currency it needs to go into. We aggregate those transactions. We fire them out the back end. We have relationships with about 70 different banks all over the world. This will be up on the internet, so I know it's not coming up very well. Here's what's interesting. From an entrepreneur's perspective or an investor's perspective, these are the kind of technologies that we're bolting onto the platform. So for risk and compliance, like I say, we use Facebook. We don't just use Facebook, because I can't walk into a regulator and say, hey, we use Facebook for our compliance. They're going to kick me right out on the street. But we do use Facebook, and we're planning to use Facebook more, and Twitter and the other social medias, to work out exactly who our customers are for risk and compliance management. We've started dispersing money into M-Pesa and the other African mobile wallet technologies. It's not a big part of our business yet, but it will be. Customers want to have money on those mobile wallets, and as that adoption rate becomes higher and higher, we're going to plug into more of them. And then for funding, this is quite interesting. We use Ripple. So we're already sending money across the network using cryptocurrencies. I can talk to you guys about this because you're entrepreneurs and you're interested and you're tech savvy. This is not something I make a big play of with the regulators or the banks because they're uncomfortable with that right now. It's going brilliantly. So there's not an entrepreneur here who wouldn't say it's going brilliantly. But I suppose the interesting thing is 7% more traffic, 7 times more traffic over the last 18 months, 10% more transactions, which means we're getting more transactions per traffic, which is good. The conversion's going the right way. And we have about 14 times more volume. And this is the fascinating thing about our business, is once customers are using you and they've embedded on your platform, they keep coming back. And if you think about my average customer, it's a guy in Germany who's working as a taxi driver. He's earning money, he's sending it back every month. It's a guy who's working in the health service in the UK, from the Philippines, sending money back every month, a Nigerian taxi driver. These are my customers. And they don't have discretionary spend. They just send money back every month. So really, who gives a shit? So what? What's the so what here? Azimo's a successful business. It's growing. Here's a few things that I would like you just to think about and take away in terms of thinking about payments. So it enables global commerce. This is the same thing as Bitcoin, but if you want to build a big global company that is servicing a need, you need to be able to get paid. All your business models depend on getting paid. You need to be able to take transactions all over the world. People like Azimo and people like Bitcoin and the payment protocols allow you to get paid. So for Uber, it couldn't exist in all these other markets. They have no physical locations in nearly all of the markets that they serve. They're getting into all sorts of problems, but they can take money using these technologies. Particularly people like Airbnb, I think we've talked about them a couple of times. The ability to instantly take payments anywhere in the world is incredibly important. So it enables global commerce. That's why payments are important. This is important as well. Some people get into being an entrepreneur to make money. Some people do it for fame. Some people do it to make a difference. And actually, this is one of the markets you can do both. Traditionally, a remittance costs 10%. This is Bill Gates a couple of years ago at the G20 summit doing his report card for the world, saying what are the big problems that the world is facing. And one of the biggest ones is the cost that it costs to send money across borders, up to 10% for a remittance transaction. And he said, if you could get that cost down to simply to 5%, you could cut it in half, that would release $15 billion every year. And the maths has changed in the last 2 years. The number's now closer to 20, 25. That's something that we're all working towards. So if you think about lowering the transactional costs of money transfer, this is the impact. It helps millions and millions of people all over the world have more money in their pocket, become more active economic members of society, more money to spend on all the products and services that you're going to build over the next 5 years. It's important stuff. And then I guess this is the thing that's interesting to the banks, or in fact interesting to Mark Zuckerberg when he wants to get into payments. Where are the next 2 billion customers going to come from? They don't have a bank account at the moment. But if you can enable them through either a mobile phone, through a mobile wallet, through a Bitcoin wallet, to be financially included, then they're customers, they can save, they can invest, they can make financing decisions, they're better educated, they can, the list goes on. The impact of actually getting people financially on grid goes on. So whenever I'm talking to people about, so what? Think about the next billion customers. Think about the doubling of the size of all of these digital markets. That's really interesting. So, if there are any entrepreneurs, I don't care about the investors, any entrepreneurs in the crowd thinking what to do next, fintech, financial services, payments are where it's at. I think you really need to think hard about this. Everyone gets a little bit scared off by the financial services. It's a regulated industry, but you can get over these hurdles, and it's a very big barrier to entry. And once you're there, you're in a good spot. Massive, fast-growing market, tick. Next stage in the evolution of money, this is digital. If you think about all the other markets that have been totally changed, transformed by digital technology, think about travel. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember this, but when I was small, we used to go as a family to the travel agent, and we'd sit in the travel agent and we'd look at a brochure. Does anyone remember? You look at a brochure and you go, hey, I want to go there. And then you talk to the lady and she'd get on a computer and phone somebody up, and that would be your holiday. You'd book it. Nobody does that anymore. It just doesn't exist. Western Union won't exist in 10 years' time on the high street. And you can be a part of that. The great thing is all the banks are lazy. Western Union, lazy, slow, hard to make decisions, controlled by their quarterly results. Most of the people at Western Union or the big banks probably spend more on their haircuts than it costs to put this conference on. These are slow legacy players. There's a real opportunity to make a change before they start to move. There's room for lots of more billion-dollar companies. And hey, that's why we're here. We want to build big, valuable companies. And there's that potential to change the world for the better. So if you're thinking about what to do, think about fintech, think about payments. And I'd be very happy to, help you on board in that journey. Have a go on Azimo. If you need to pay anyone from Europe in the Ukraine, or indeed anywhere else in the world, give it a go. Email me. I'll make sure you can use it for free. And thank you very much. Any questions at all? Yes.
Thanks for a nice presentation.
Yes.
So I wonder if anyone hears me, but still,
Yeah, no, here
there
you
are
go.
like two questions. One is general, and the other relates to my experience of using Azimo. Okay?
Yeah, we're not kissing, by the way.
No.
I've heard about that in the Ukraine, but no, I'm joking. That's a joke.
First one is, what do you think about the prospect of high street banks taking over these kind of businesses? So
Yep.
they've got big bunch of cash, why not?
Yep.
And second is that ICA own a UK-based company,
Yep.
and we tried to use Azimo to pay to our contractors here in Ukraine, but
Yep.
it turned out that you do not allow to process corporate business cards. So are you going to introduce this in nearest future? Because
Yes.
that would be a very good feature.
Okay.
Thanks.
So 2 questions. One is, will the banks take over this market? And the second is, what about corporate? So, interestingly, the banks do look at this, and they go in waves. They, at the moment, don't like payments as a business. Every single bank, with maybe the exception of Bank of America and a couple of the Chinese banks, maybe the developing world banks are lending-led. So they just always think about how much money can I lend somebody. Banks are never transactional services led. This is a transactional service. So they always bolt on the ability to do foreign exchange or payments as this kind of thing they have to do to service a customer. They put their worst people on it. They overcharge when they can possibly get away with it. So I think, you've seen, so interestingly, Spain had some of the highest immigration over the last 15 years. People migrating to Spain to work in the building industry as the Spanish economy boomed. Banks there bought up a load of money transfer companies, and then they shut them down because they didn't think they weren't actually able to service his customers in the way that they wanted. They said, we can send your money and it will get there a week later. Anyone had that with a bank? Yeah, the money will get there a week later. That's my mum. She needs to feed herself. Well, that's my brother. He needs to go to school and pay his school fees. This is not an industry where a week is fine. 50% of our payments are instant. So I think the banks are certainly a threat. I think they're a great potential exit partner. That means somebody who's going to buy you for lots of money. But I'm not worried about the banks. I'm not really worried about Western Union. The people I'm really worried about, and in a way, if they come in, great. It makes it much more exciting. But I think the people who might solve this are the people that think about customers in a completely different way. They're not lending-led, they're information-led. So the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples, who will think, if I control this aspect of the customer's interaction, the payment side, that's another great piece of data which I can use to sell advertising, other services, all sorts of stuff. So that's a long answer to a short question. Corporate cards are a problem for us. So at the moment, the Visa interchange on a corporate card is around about 3%. So it kind of destroys all of the value creation that you have of a low-cost financial services business. We are negotiating with Visa and MasterCard and a bunch of other people to try and bring those fees down. As soon as we've done that, we'll pass that on and we'll start taking business cards. We're also looking at other ways that people can fund us. Bitcoin, Ripple, Software, there's a bunch of other alternative payment networks, ways of getting money into the company. And I would say that if you want the best way from a corporate perspective to send money with Azimo is to use a bank account. Just send us the money into our bank account. So I know it's not perfect, it's not the right answer, but that's where we are right now. And it's because of those greedy bastards at Visa and MasterCard. Apologies to anyone who's from Visa or MasterCard. Any other questions? Thank you very much.